Week 13 Sunday breakdowns, everything you need to know in 15 minutes. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these for every primetime game as well as every game on Sunday to give you a unique edge, looking at run scheme metrics, coverage data, and overall trends nobody really talks about because it relates to the scheme behind the game instead of just the numbers you see on the screen. Without further ado, let's get into these breakdowns. As always, in the description are links to my socials, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Make sure you are following all three for some additional breakdowns. Let's start with this New Orleans-Miami game. Miami is a little more man-to-man heavy, and they are, bottom line, bad versus the run. Now, Devin Neal saw an uptick last week with the Alvin Kamara injury. And when you go look at some of these running back performances against the Miami Dolphins, it's very intriguing to see what Alvin Kamara can do if he will play again. At the time I'm recording, there is no clarity on the injury. All those injury clarity stuff will be in the comments. But you look at some of these performances all the way back to really week 3 with the James Cook game, but Breece Hall, 81, Rico Dowdle, 206, Kamani Vidal, 124, Quinshon Judkins, 84, 3 touchdowns in that game, by the way. Nothing really on the Atlanta end, which was weird. That was an odd game. And then next week, you get Derrick Henry with 119, James Cook, 13-53 again, a game where the Bills got blown out, to be honest with you, and they had to abandon the run a little bit. Chris Rodriguez, 15 for 79 in a closer game prior to the bye for the Miami Dolphins. Again, the Dolphins are coming off of bye, and like I mentioned on this sheet too, they are a little more man-to-man heavy, more susceptible to the big play down the field, but they really struggle against tight ends. Now, I am not convinced that Juwan Johnson is going to have this crazy game against the Miami Dolphins. But again, you look at Juwan Johnson's game logs against some of these tight end susceptible teams, he takes advantage almost every single time. And with Tyler Shuck playing quarterback, he's been even better, right? He had 6 for 46 last week against Atlanta, against Carolina, who's brutal against tight ends, 4 for 92, 3 for 31, and a touchdown the week prior. Really dating back to week 7, he's had at least 50 yards or 46 yards, a touchdown or both in all of those games. There was a little blip in the middle of the season here, but after that, he's been pretty good. So I really do like Juwan Johnson in those games. Another really interesting thing to note is a Darren Waller potential return in this game. Now, the Saints are kind of middle of the pack against tight ends. There's nothing super crazy there. But when you look at Darren Waller's past production, it's absolutely worth noting and worth looking at because he was really, really good when he played with Tua Tagovailoa, the 4-ish games he was playing, right? 2 touchdowns against the Jets on Monday Night Football, 78 and a touchdown again against a susceptible team in Carolina, a touchdown against the Chargers, and then Cleveland. I believe he got hurt in that game, if I'm not mistaken, but some really, really good performances. So Darren Waller is somebody to watch as well. I think Miami does win this game. Houston versus Indianapolis. The Daniel Jones injury is absolutely something to monitor here, right? He is looking like he's hobbling, looking like he's limping a little bit in his walkthroughs, in his practice reps. So it's definitely something to monitor. And what this Houston Texans defense is going to do off of a mini bye, might I add, is force a guy like Daniel Jones to really be a true pocket passer. They're going to stop the run with Jonathan Taylor. This is arguably the best run defense in the NFL, arguably the best defense in the NFL too. And they're going to make Daniel Jones beat them with his arm, very much like what they did with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen was more mobile than an injured Daniel Jones. I think Houston's defense has a lot of success in this game as a result. What's also really interesting to note about this Colts defense is the change they've kind of unwillingly undergone from about 3 weeks ago, right? They trade for Sauce Gardner. You got one elite corner. Last week, Charvarius Ward comes, and you have 2 elite corners on the outside. But all of a sudden, your run defense sputters because DeForest Buckner is put on IR. So teams are attacking the Indianapolis Colts a little bit differently now. When you can look at the overall numbers, we could look at the overall numbers here in the run game, you'd see, like, you would say, oh, Woody Marks can't do anything or Nick Chubb can't do anything. I'm not convinced that's the case. The Indianapolis run defense has been worse as of late after the departure of DeForest Buckner, which is very, very important to note in all of this because the Texans, who like to keep the ball in the middle of the field, both in the run game and in the pass game, are probably going to lean back into that a little bit more, especially in a closer game. Now, what's interesting is CJ Stroud is likely going to play this game, but Dalton Schultz is the guy I want to monitor because the Colts are allowing 6.4 tight end receptions per game, as well as 72.2 tight end yards per game. Now, you go look at his game logs, Dalton Schultz's game logs, and you're extremely excited with the recent production until you realize that recent production has been with Davis Mills. Now, Buffalo, if you guys don't know, is the best defense against tight ends in the NFL, 1 for 8. I thought he would do a little bit better, but not wildly shocking there. But before that, 6 for 51, 7 for 53, 6 for 77. This is the game where Davis Mills came in. Now, This is not to say CJ Stroud can't provide Dalton Schultz with good games. Like his best game of the year, a 9 for 98 game, was against Seattle, another more zone-heavy team. And then he had a good game against Baltimore, 5 catches. Like he can obviously produce with CJ Stroud, but with Davis Mills likely not starting and CJ Stroud stepping back in the lineup, it's definitely something to monitor, but the matchup to me is almost too good. I do think Houston, this is my second, upset number 2 of the week. Upset number 1 was Dallas over Kansas City. Upset 2 of the week, I do think Houston wins this game. Atlanta versus the Jets. If you guys have heard me talk about Breece Hall, the volume, which if you haven't, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any more of those breakdowns, you'll know how much I like him really in any matchup, but this matchup against Atlanta especially, I love. Now, the Falcons don't have Drake London. We all know this. I don't know when he's coming back. I hope he comes back soon, but the New York Jets, a very man-heavy team, will provide or should provide some downfield opportunities for a guy like Darnell Mooney. But on the other side, Breece Hall gets this Falcons defense that's bottom 10 in running back receptions, bottom 12 in running back receiving yards per game, and they're allowing 133.1 yards per game and 4.56 yards per carry. Really, every single time Breece Hall has been in a game where it's moderately close, right? He's produced. He's gotten in the end zone. He's caught multiple balls. He's been really, really good in games that they've been able to keep close. Like you look at this Ravens game, which was moderately close, right? He has over 100 yards. You look at this New England game, which was not. He doesn't even touch 70. You look at the Cleveland game that was. He has 120 yards and a touchdown. You look at the Cincinnati game. Great game there. Carolina, nothing crazy. Denver, 22-59. He at least touched the ball 22 times in that game. Now, the Dallas game, it's weird because this was a blowout and you'd think he'd have more production through the air, but this was Dallas pre-Quinn and Williams acquisition, and he had 113 yards and only 14 carries. That's almost 10 yards a carry, guys. That's pretty good. Miami, a closer game, has over 100 yards. You go look at the Tampa Bay game. This is the one that scares me because he had however many 13 touches for 52 yards, and it was a really close game. But then Buffalo, you get blown out, nothing. And then week 1 against Pittsburgh, crazy game. Basically, if the game is close, Breece Hall is going to get his. And I think this game will be close. I think the Jets actually win this game, to be honest with you. I think the Jets are running the ball that well, and this Atlanta Falcons defense can't stop the run well enough to make me feel comfortable picking them and Kirk Cousins in back-to-back spots. San Francisco versus Cleveland, the Shedeur Sanders home debut, which if any of you are in Cleveland, I will be there. Make sure you say what's up. The 49ers are pretty good on the ground and not great through the air. That's the bottom line with their defense. They're allowing 248.8 pass yards per game. That's the 8th most in the league, but they're allowing the 10th fewest rush yards per game. The 49ers are also allowing the 3rd most wide receiver yards and most running back receptions. My final point here is weather. It is supposed to snow in Cleveland on Sunday. So I think that probably means you feel more comfortable with a Quinshon Judkins, or obviously you're starting Christian McCaffrey on your fantasy teams, but like a Christian McCaffrey here. In the pass game, though, that's what I'm looking at. Like for the Browns, if this is going to be a snow game where you have to keep the ball short in the pass game, Dylan Sampson's a guy I'm looking at to have a bigger game as a 3rd down back, as a screen guy, and he caught a touchdown from Shedeur last week. Dylan Sampson is a guy I'm looking at. I'm also looking at Harold Fannin Jr., who was good last week, even though San Francisco doesn't allow a ton of targets to the tight end position. They are targeted in the slot, I believe, at top 5 highest rate in the league, an extremely, extremely high rate. And we saw it last week against Carolina. That's where a lot of the targets came because San Francisco more balanced in what they do defensively, but they kind of keep everything between the hashes. Shedeur's probably going to try to do that. They're probably going to force Shedeur to try to do that, not give Jerry Jeudy the one-on-ones on the outside, Cedric Tillman the one-on-ones on the outside. And honestly, guys, I think Cleveland wins this game. I think in a snow game, the 49ers defense, this whole thing catches up with them. I think Cleveland wins in upset number 3. Rams versus Panthers. I'm going to blow this up a little bit for you guys, too. Make this little, there we go. Panthers are a very zone and cover 3 heavy team that screams out wide receivers. So Devontae more than Puka, but love both of those in terms of the schematic matchup. However, the Panthers have been really good against wide receivers. Bottom 10 or top 10 defensively, and wide receiver receptions allowed. You saw it last week. Obviously, Juwan Jennings got in the end zone. 1 second. You saw it last week. Obviously, Juwan Jennings got in the end zone. But there wasn't a ton of production from him, from Ricky Pearsall. It was Kittle. It was McCaffrey. It was between the hashes, right? That is what the Panthers are going to force you to do. They're not, well, I shouldn't say force you to do. That's where you're going to have more success against the Panthers because these DBs are playing really well. They also struggle against tight ends. Now, the Rams tight end snap count and production is a little bit confusing, if I'm being honest with you guys. We'll pull it up right now. Like, you look last week, and Davis Allen had a good week, but Colby Parkinson's playing more. Colby Parkinson, if I'm not mistaken, got tackled at the 2 or the 1 on Sunday night too. Higbee didn't play last week, and then Terrence Ferguson, to me, who is the most dynamic pass catcher you got in that tight end room, played a little bit more as a result. But then you scroll back through and you're like, that was Ferguson's lowest snap count since, I guess, tied for week 11, but week 5. So this tight end room is extremely, extremely confusing. The only mainstay, consistent mainstay, has been Parkinson. And then when you go look at the game logs for these tight ends, you can't confidently lean into any of them as well. Like Colby Parkinson had 4 for 41 touchdown. Maybe it was Allen who got tackled at the 1 then. But Colby Parkinson had back-to-back, 3 straight weeks with a touchdown, but the production has been better from everybody else. Like Ferguson had 54 3 weeks ago and led the team in receiver, or led tight end room in receiving. You go to the week after that, and these guys, Ferguson, Higbee, 30 plus apiece, and then Higbee with a 23-yarder, and then Davis Allen with 3 catches. Like the tight end room production is really hard to predict, but Terrence Ferguson to me is the most dynamic if he plays more, because Higbee does not play. We wait to see, but Parkinson is the guy who's been getting in the end zone there. That is low-key a guy I'm looking at to score. The Rams are also on defense, top 3 in slot target rate allowed. The 49ers last week, like we talked about, were extremely, extremely similar against this Carolina Panthers team. When you go look at what the Panthers did against them, it, doesn't, I shouldn't say it gives us paints a good picture, but it does allow us to understand where the production will come from or can come from, right? Like Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette have no business leading the team in receiving over Ted McMillan, like absolutely no business, but they're the slot guys. So that should tell you all you need to know about where the ball should go from this Carolina Panthers offense against the Rams. Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, the guys who are between the hashes in the slot. That's where the majority of the production comes against a defense like the Rams, against a defense like the 49ers. So I like Ted McMillan for a bounce back game, and the Rams secondary is, I think, probably worse than their run defense, but it's not super far off. I'm looking at those two guys again between the hashes. Jacksonville versus Tennessee. I think the Rams win this game, and I already gave my pick up there. Jacksonville versus Tennessee. Cam Ward gets this Jaguars defense that's really, really bad against the pass, but really, really good against the run. The Jaguars are allowing 253.5 pass yards per game. That's the 7th most in the league, but are also allowing the fewest rush yards per game. For Cam Ward, he's coming off back-to-back weeks against top 5 defenses. And when you look at some of these quarterback performances against the Jacksonville Jaguars, you get really comfortable and really honestly excited about what Cam Ward can do. Jacoby Brissett had 317 yards and a touchdown, right? Justin Herbert didn't have a great game against them. Jaguars played an awesome game there, but then you keep going back up. Davis Mills, 3 total touchdowns. Geno Smith, 4 total touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, 5 total touchdowns. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't even get in this game. Sam Darnold, 295 and 2 total touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes, 318, 2 total touchdowns. Brock Purdy, 309, 2 total touchdowns. CJ Stroud, 204 and a touchdown. Jake Browning, 241, 2 touchdowns. Like, all quarterbacks who have gone against these guys have performed, almost all of them. Now, Cam Ward to me is a guy who's getting better as the weeks go on, but the Titans can't really run the ball either. So I look at this where the Jaguars' run defense is really good. The pass defense is really bad, and think Cam Ward's going to have to air it out all day long. And I think against a secondary that's really struggled lately, I think he has success doing it. I do think Jacksonville wins this game. And when you look at Tennessee, they're not great against the run, but Jacksonville's display in terms of which running back is going to get the football is extremely confusing. Like, you go back 2 weeks ago, ETN 1973 and 2, but Tootin had 15 for 74. And then you think ETN's walking into this game against Arizona injured. How much is he going to play? Now he scores a receiving touchdown and has double Tootin's carries on the ground. So I can't confidently say I like one running back in Jacksonville more than another, but another guy I do really like against Titans defense, giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, is Jacoby Myers. Like, you can see stepping in since he's gotten here, 3 for 41, 5 for 64, and 4 for 50 and a touchdown. Now, it sounds like Brian Thomas Jr. will be back this week, so that will likely change the production for him, Washington, Brenton Strange. But the bottom line is, this Jaguars offense is healthy now. Well, outside Travis Hunter. Healthier than it's ever been, really. And I think they can put up a ton of points against this Titans team. I don't think it's wildly close either. I think Jacksonville wins this one. Arizona, Tampa Bay, the biggest note here is Arizona is extremely middle field open. They run tons of cover 4. Now, there's questions about Baker. Does he play? How limited is he? Just know, against cover 4 heavy teams, middle field open heavy teams, it is the Kate Otten show. I want everybody to make sure they know that. It is the Kate Otten show against these kinds of teams. You go look at some of the game logs that he's had, right? Take a sip of coffee real quick. He's had awesome games against teams who have rolled out in zone. The only issue is I don't know how much Chris Godwin is going to take from his slot production moving forward, because we didn't get a good look at it against the Rams, right? But you scroll back through these zone-heavy teams, 4 for 81 against Seattle, 5 for 51 against San Francisco. Detroit's a man-heavy team, which is interesting to note about this one. New Orleans kind of balanced. New England balanced, 9 for 82. Buffalo zone-heavy, but like we talked about with Schultz, the best defense against tight ends. And then Rams zone-heavy, 4 for 21. Like, Cade Otton has production against these cover 4 middle field open zone-heavy teams. A lot of it comes back to Baker, though. Now, if I'm being honest with you guys, I really like the Arizona Cardinals in this game. I really like Jacoby Brissett, especially the way he's been playing. But the bottom line is, teams have been ripping through this Buccaneers secondary. Like, it is not good. It has not been good. Stafford, 273, 3 touchdowns. Allen, 317, 3 touchdowns. Drake May, 270, 2 touchdowns. Nothing really from New Orleans, but they switched quarterbacks. Like, what are you going to do there? More than 250 combined yards. Jared Goff, 241 and a touchdown. Mac Jones, 347. Sam Darnold, 341, 4 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, not a great game, but 2 touchdowns. Tyrod Taylor, 197, 2 touchdowns. Stroud, 207, a touchdown. Penix, 2 total touchdowns in week 1. As of late, Stafford, Allen, Drake May, Jared Goff, and even Rattler and Shuck combined have really been taking advantage of this defense. No game has a quarterback walked in and had less than 240 passing yards since, if you combine the Saints numbers, since week 4, and that was Jalen Hurts. So this Bucs pass defense has been really bad, and it's absolutely worth noting and taking that with you. Minnesota versus Seattle, TJ Hawkinson has an awesome matchup against the Seattle defense. Like we talked about, very zone heavy. His target rate triples against zone. They're giving up 71.3 tight end yards per game, 6.9 tight end receptions per game, extremely zone heavy. Seattle's going to win this game, I think. I don't think it's going to be wildly close. I don't need to say too much more about this. Minnesota's all over the place defensively and offensively. Just know recently they have not been able to stop the run. Emmanuel Wilson had an awesome game against them. I don't think it's a coincidence. Against teams that really want to pound the rock, they get worn down. That's what I've noticed. Buffalo versus Pittsburgh. Steelers running backs, absolutely staring at them, right? Bills are allowing 148.9 rush yards per game. It's the 3rd most in the league, and 5.32 yards per carry. It's the 2nd most in the league. Now, Warren and Gainwell had a 50-50 split last week in terms of snaps, but Warren had 8 more carries. Gainwell had more production through the air. To me, it's clear who the number 1 back is. It's Jaylen Warren. It's just a matter of, can he do enough with the opportunities this week against a bad run defense? Granted, Chicago wasn't great last week either. I think he has an awesome game. The Bills are also allowing the fewest pass yards per game, meaning teams are probably going to run the ball a little bit more against them. The Steelers are allowing the most pass yards per game and the most wide receiver yards overall as well. And Josh Allen is now coming off of a mini bye, pissed off. I think he has a great game. I think Buffalo wins. The only thing that scares me here, neither Bills starting offensive tackle is playing. Neither of them. If this ball is going to get moved down the field, it's got to get out quick. Just like it did against Houston with Khalil Shakir. It's got to get out quick, and they got to score in the red zone. Again, this is a weird game where everything points to Pittsburgh at home. Buffalo not looking good. I think Josh Allen finds a way, but it's going to be good. This is going to be a really good game. And then Sunday night, we have one more game. The only note here for Raiders-Chargers, Raiders run the most zone in the NFL. Herbert versus zone. Aranda Gadsden's going to see a huge uptick, which I really like. And then you go back to the previous game. It was the Quentin Johnston show in terms of downfield explosions, right? Now, Aranda Gadsden wasn't really playing when they played him in week 2. This is a different game, but Herbert was great. The run game was not. This Raiders run defense is really good, but you go look at the wide receiver production, right? Quentin Johnston, 3 for 71 down the field, divided pretty evenly. And then you go look at the tight end performances again. Gadsden's not even playing. And Will Dissly has 1 catch for 7 yards, and Tyler Conklin doesn't even catch a ball. So I don't lean too much into the tight end production that was there because Aranda Gadsden's not playing. His target rate sees a big uptick against zone, which I do really like. Then Sunday Night Football, Denver, Washington Commanders, top 10 in man-to-man. Troy Franklin has the highest target percentage on the Broncos against man. Big uptick compared to zone. The Commanders are allowing 170.3 wide receiver yards per game. I think the Chargers beat the Raiders. I think the Broncos, even though this does smell like a sneaky upset, go into Washington and win that game. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, and we will see you next time. God bless.